I'd like to get that kind of welcome when I walk through my home group doors. I am a grateful alcoholic named Ginny. I am here because I want to be sober more than I want to be drunk. And I know I'm sober through the grace of God and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous today. And I say that every single time. I got some. Because my sponsor, Blanche, which some of you may have known, she said it every single time she shared. And I didn't understand it at first until we had a conversation later on in her life when she said, Ginny, I'm forgetting so much. Let me not forget that I'm an alcoholic and how I feel about it. So I do want to say I got some more cards this weekend. So this is like never out of style. And I don't know, after Amy got done, I went to my room, I had to find some coffee, and I looked in the mirror and I felt like my hair had gotten blown back, and it's puffier, I'm gonna tell you it is. And I thought, how do you follow that, man? But then I said, Jenny, you know, it's not about, we do copycat, but it's not about I gotta look like Amy today, and I don't have to look like Cliff today or Ralph today. I get to look like me. And I'm still figuring out who that is sometimes. But you guys, somebody asked me last night, what has Alcoholics Anonymous given me? And I said a voice, because I never had one before. So now I've got this new list of nuggets from everybody. And I can't condense what everyone else said this weekend. I'm gonna point to Roger, and I'm gonna say, by the weekend, because that's how it works. This is a zipper. And if you lose one of the teeth, it don't work. It's just this collage that it's beautiful. We get to create it. Amy talked about these threads that we weave together, and it's the truth. And I came in here this morning. I come in here every day. This is how I think about my day. I wake up and I've got blinders on. And I can't see anything but what's in here. And then I walk into a meeting, and it's like opening the door, and it's a new experience, and I have to be open to it. And you guys, I come in here with this, I don't even know what it is, maybe 60 degrees of perception. And you give me the whole 360. And I can't get that on my own because I don't have it up here. It has to come from you. And I still have to be open to it. So what did I hear this weekend? I heard Cliff talk about perfection, procrastination, paralysis. And that's going to be another thing, that little mantra that I'm adding to the soundtrack of my life. Principles for life. Amy talked about the defenders of character. Yes, alive and well. Cliff talked about getting right with God, getting right with self, getting right with others, and a lifetime of service. Yes. And the hell freezes over list. Amy talked about that spiritual permission, which such a great, just 2 words that was what I needed so often in early sobriety, and I didn't know that's what you called it. I don't have the vocabulary. And you guys give it to me. We've entered the realm of spirit without even knowing it. Uncover, discover, discard. And Ralph talked about, what does sobriety look like on me? What does integrity look like on me? What does compassion look like on me? What does confidence look like for me? And a lot of times, I don't know. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And I've been in a lot of meetings where it seemed like the entire meeting was about, well, what's the definition? What does that word mean? And we're talking about spiritual experience, spiritual awakening. So I'm going to give you my definitions, and you don't have to agree with them. And you don't have to tell me about it either. Spiritual growth. So for me, a spiritual experience is just a moment. It's a moment, but for me, it's always sudden, emotional, and blunt. It's a Godsmack, and that's what I call it, my Godsmacks. And a spiritual awakening is a transformation. It's the ongoing change that I see in myself, how I see you, how I see the world, how I interact with it, how my behavior is manifested it today, how I sustain that over time. What does that look like? So I talked about 1, 2, and 3 Friday night, and I can tell you that my first spiritual experience was not from alcohol, and it wasn't from sobriety. It was from a wound. And I believe one of our Al-Anon speakers talked about that. And I agree, if you are not in Al-Anon and you're not sitting in those meetings, you're missing half of this. I feel like this is just an excuse, right? What we're doing up here, it isn't really the big thing over the weekend. It's not. It's what's happening out there in the hallways. It's what's happening in the workshops. It's what's happening when you meet somebody new and you're making a new friend and you're getting a new perspective on life and on sobriety and how to live it. I think that's the biggest thing about these things to me. And I sit there and I think about, what does it look like if we carry it outside of this room and outside of our meeting and outside of the U.S.? What does it look like for us? I mean, we've got 2 friends, Dave and Sean. They're in here somewhere. Where are you at, Dave and Sean? You're in here somewhere. There you are. They're from Yorkshire. Well, he's from Yorkshire, England. And I want to be a good representation, an adequate representation of these steps. At least let me be that, I believe that there is a power that waits patiently for our surrender. And he meets us. Look, I'm gonna do it already. He meets us in jails, whether it's physical or mental. He meets us in these church basements, and he meets us in graveyards. And he turns our shame and our rage and our anger into freedom. So if you're tired, just be willing. If you have a problem with God, just be willing. As Ralph pointed out last night, we learn through stories. At least I do. I'd like to sit there and say, oh yes, you can tell me all your nuggets of information and I'm going to retain it and I'm going to know how to use it on the first try. Amy talked about that. It doesn't happen that way for me. So I feel like this is where the rubber hits the road for me, step 12. And it's assuming that I've done all the other steps and that I've put them into some kind of practice in my life. Well, let's test that theory out, and see whether or not that actually happens. So I'm going to tell you some stories, and it's going to be wide-ranging stories, and I hope you see yourself in some of them. And if not, just consider it a yet. So I am 5 years sober. We're going to do some time traveling today. I'm 5 years sober. I have refused to do 2 amends. Marilyn said, write the letters. And I said, fine. And I wrote the letters, and that's all I did with them. I put them in a drawer, and that was it. She said, if you don't do this, you might get drunk. And I'm not going to get drunk, and I'm not doing it. I'm telling you, I didn't stop growling in AA for like 4 years. So what happened, I've got a new sponsor now. She knows about those letters because Marilyn's gone at this point. And I've got a sponsor named Blanche. And what happened is my meemaw died. And she said, are you going to the funeral? I said, yes. Is that the same graveyard where your father and grandfather are buried? Yes. Take the letters and read them. Fine. Because, we're gonna get, work. And I went to my grandfather's grave first. It was not the big mountain I made it out to be. I got through it. And right next to it is my father's headstone, and I can't even look at it. And I am reading this crumpled up piece of paper, and I am angry and just done. And I'm thinking, I'm never coming back to Galax, Virginia again as long as I live. Good. And I start walking away from that headstone, and this little voice in my head said, Ginny, you should at least look at the headstone. Nope. Mm-mm. And I kept walking, and I heard that voice again, look at the headstone. Turned around, marched back to the headstone, I looked at it, and God smacked me. Because my sobriety date is my father's birthday. And I didn't remember that. And I thought, all right. And this is the thing that gets me. This is what I've been hearing people talk about all weekend, is that moment, that split second between nope and yes. Between you can't help me and I need your help. Between I don't know and please tell me. That moment when grace feels like lightning. And that's the only way I can describe it, because it's just like that. And I realized Taffy Time showed up. And if you don't know what Taffy Time is, Roger's there with the CDs. Taffy Time showed up. And I'm having this conversation in my head. And I remember the things that people said to me about, well, who are you? You're not bigger than God. How can you not forgive them? And I remember Sister Helen saying to me, people teach what they're taught. And I thought, what does that even mean? You know, and then in that moment, I had been making my decisions based on yesterday's shame, guilt, and rage. And I had my father and my grandfather sitting on my shoulders every single day, and I don't even know it. And how do you carry a message like that when you're still sitting in the mess? And I realized people do teach what they're taught. What was done to me perhaps was done to them, because people teach what they're taught. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I am making an amends to them, because I got to stop that cycle. Amy talked about it this morning. My sober baby has never run from me. She's never tried to be unseen. She's had a voice her entire life. And she's not afraid to use it. And I got to stop that cycle. And that is an amends to them. I never thought of it that way. So, practicing these principles in all our affairs, tall order, right? Tall order. And this is why my sobriety gets tested here, and it's not in the moments when I know what I'm doing. It's not in the like I've had that experience already. Yep, check. I know what to do here. It's in those moments when I don't have any sober living experience, and I'm filled with fear instead of faith for a minute. And I respond and react the wrong way. So let's talk about some of those. When I was 3 years sober, I pulled up to this three-quarter way house in Glen Burnie, Maryland. I was picking up some women, taking them to a meeting. And I'm sitting in the driveway, and I'm looking in the next driveway, and there's this old, muscle car, and the hood's open, and there's 4 guys standing around it. And I'm starting to realize, oh, that's Officer Junta. That's the guy whose ankle I broke. Well, God, I wasn't planning on doing this one, but okay. And I got out of the car, and I walked, and I said, may I talk to you for a minute? And he looked at me, and he said, sure, and he told his kids to go away, and I said, I just want to apologize for my behavior that day, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you were able to stop me, and that because of you, that was my last escapade. I didn't say that. But I said that was my last time. And then after that, God was able to work on me, and Alcoholics Anonymous was able to work on me. And I don't know, maybe he needs Al-Anon, because he said, well, that's great, I'm glad to hear it. You're not hanging out with that guy anymore, are you? Like it's all his fault. I said, no, sir, I'm not. I had to change everything, people, places, and things. And I thought, well, that was wonderful, because I never thought I'd see him again. But thank you, God. Let's skip a year later. Oh, Amy talked about this today. I'm a single mom, right? And my hostage that was in that last car chase with me is my sober baby's dad. And we haven't seen him. He doesn't work. He doesn't pay anything. And he calls up, and he says, I want to see Shay. I said, come on over. And I didn't realize when I said that I have a resentment. And he comes in and he's drunk, because why would I expect anything different? He's not sober. I'm sober. I'm the one who has to be accountable for this little life that I didn't sign up for to do it on my own. And I'm just being honest here. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up to do it alone. I didn't sign up to be accountable and responsible. Frankly, I don't like it. It's new and it doesn't feel good. It's itchy. And I didn't realize how much I resented being a parent. And you get to stay out there and drink and drug and do all what you want. He wants to do the dance. I'm not trying to do the dance, but he says, I don't have to take this from you. I'm leaving. And something in me went snap. And I said, you're not going anywhere, punch. Well, I went there. Yeah, I laid hands. Amy talks about it. Not my proudest moment. Everything, taffy time. Everything that came out of my mouth for the next however long it lasted was punctuated by a punch. And as he's leaving and he's screaming, I'm going to have you locked up, and I'm like, who do you think they're going to believe? You or me? Slam. There I am against the door going, man, that felt so good. It felt good. And then right behind that was, nobody knows what I just did. Secrets. And then I thought, I think I might have to tell Blanche about this. Yeah. And it wasn't, that little Alcoholics Anonymous wave came in, and then I thought, oh, shoot. I cleaned that up just now. She's going to tell me I got to make an amends, and it's exactly what happened. And she said something that still is in the soundtrack of my mind today. She said, Ginny, it's been the experience, my experience, that the people in our lives don't change. So if you don't want to keep making amends to that man, you better. All right. And she was right. The people in our lives don't change, and the same situations happen over and over and over. And here we are, 2 years later. Ring, ring. I want to see Shay. Come on over. And he's drunk, and he wants to do the dance, and I don't want to do the dance. And but you guys have been working on me for 2 years. And you've been making me work on me for 2 years. And I said to him, thank you, God, because I believe God touched me like he is right now. And I said, Mike, I love you. I love you. And we created this beautiful gift. And I want you to spend time with your daughter. I want you to be a part of her life. So anytime you have the time, please call. Please come. And I hear Al-Anon in that, because I have now been able to detach with love. I've been able to separate him from his actions and still want him to be a part of my daughter's life. In a supervised manner, mind you, but ain't getting to do it by yourself. I wasn't going to talk about this one at first, but I thought, this really isn't about my behavior. This goes to what Ralph was talking about last night, and integrity and how we show up in sobriety. So I'm about 10 years sober, and I'm at a meeting in Baltimore City, and this man walks up to me and he says, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Well, I'd like to have lunch with you if that's okay. I need to make an amends to you." And I said, "Okay, sure." And we meet for lunch, and this man who's coming up on 30 years of sobriety, and I told you I've got about 10, he said, "I need to make an amends to you. I knew you when you were out there drinking, and I used you horribly." Now, I'm having this fully formed conversation in my head. Well, hang on. You got almost 20 years more than I've got, so you're telling me you were doing this when you were sober. And not only that, the conversation went on to like, "Hey, why don't we continue that?" And I'm glad I was as sober as I was, and I don't have to put a name to that person. I know that person is living in their own hell because they don't have the integrity, they don't have the sobriety that I want. But I was just able to politely decline and say, "No, thank you, and have a good life." And I understand what people are saying when it's like, some people I don't want what they have. Some people, all you have is numbers, and do I want to show up like that? I don't want to show up like that. I almost didn't talk about that one, but I was like, ah. This is a funner one. 13 years sober, Ralph talked about it, Cliff talked about it. My world has fallen apart. I've lost my job. I just bought a house. Sobriety. And it's still just me. I've never been married. I've got 4 kids, and I didn't raise 3 of them. I've been a mother to 1. And I'm like, what do I do now? So I go back to school, and I was awarded a grant to learn for a year, and they paid for my school, and they paid for the books, and they paid for the tests and all this stuff, and then I got a job at the end of it. Yay! And the college called me up about a year later, Annapolis Community College, and they said, "Hey, we're having this big consortium meeting for all the colleges in the United States that participated in this grant. We want you to represent our college." And I was like, yes! Yes! Because the 2 things that have changed me the most in sobriety is Alcoholics Anonymous and God and education. They said, "Good, it's at the White House." Click! We're not talking about Ralph White House. We're talking about the one down the road here. And so here we go. I show up with about 15 people from the college. I'm in the middle of the herd. And this talkative lady behind me, I loved it. We're walking, there's no other way to describe this. We're walking in this fenced in, totally, walkway to get into the executive White House. You pass checkpoints, and at the first checkpoint, you give up your ID. And then you're in this tunnel. And this lady's behind me going, "Oh, I don't like this. This is kind of closed in. I don't like the way I feel here." And I'm like, it's kind of normal for me. I'm used to this kind of constriction. And we get to the next checkpoint, and I'm looking ahead, and I can see them handing out these badges. Green badge, green badge, green badge. They get to me, red badge. And the lady goes, "Oh, they must have ran out of green. Maybe they're just giving out different colors today." And I'm in my head going, "No, I don't think that's it." I really don't. We get to the next checkpoint where we're finally in a building now because we've been in this tunnel the entire time. And it's like, yep, go that way, yep, go that way. You, wait. You need an escort. Now, I love this. 15 people got righteously indignant for me. And if it's never happened for you, it's awesome. It's an awesome feeling. They're all mad. Now, what do you mean? She's going to introduce the vice president, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, all right, God, I got to out myself to these people that I don't know. And I said, hang on. I am a convicted felon. They absolutely have the right to enact the security protocols that they have in place to make sure that the dignitaries that are here are safe. They have the right. And I am being judged on paper. Now, I got to tell you, when everybody around you gets angry, and it feels good, and then for a minute they're calming down, I'm ramping up. Amy knows what I mean. And there I am standing in this room with this red badge around my neck, And in the squirrel has started, right? The squirrel is going, see, it's never going to be enough. You're never going to be good enough. You're always going to be judged on paper. It doesn't matter what you do. You will never be enough. You'll never make it right. And I bet he was an Al-Anon. He comes walking over to me, and he says, I can see you're starting to get a little upset. Yes. Understatement. And he said, I don't know what you've been through, and I don't know where you've been. But look at where you are.
Wow. Yes. Yes.
See, I need you guys to push me beyond where I'm stuck. I'm sitting in this rut, and my soundtrack will play that rut. And I need you at times to push me forward. And that's what he did. And I thought, he is absolutely right. And the only person that can take this away from me right now is me. And I can fulfill their expectations, and I can act like the insane idiot that they think I am because of that piece of paper. And I'm not going to do it. I do not have to be the person you think I am. So let's time travel forward. All right, we're going to go to, I just moved to Florida a couple of years ago. And I am naturally shy. I really am. I am. I will sit there and let you all do the talking. And if you don't ask me something, I'll be quiet. I'm happy to be quiet the entire time. And so I thought, Ginny, get out and get to know your neighborhood and interact with your neighbors. And they were going to have a Super Bowl party. Now, I like football, yes. So I go up to the community center. And there's 3 women sitting there with matching shoes and purses. And I'm showing up in cut-off shorts and a tank top. I'd just been working in the yard. I didn't take a shower, I didn't know it was going to be that kind of party. And I just thought it's just a community thing. So I signed up on some blocks, and I'm like, yes, I like winning money potentially on football. But I'm looking around, there's nobody else here. And I'm thinking, is this a Super Bowl party or what? Where's all the guys at, because guys like football too. And I said, so what's happening today? She said, well, there's going to be some games out back, and there's food out back. So I said, is that where everybody is, out back? All the guys are out there on the back 40, guys going wild, Now, I didn't think there was anything inappropriate in what I just said. But this lady... You ladies will know what I'm talking about. She gave me this look, this one that started at the top, went down to the bottom, and back up. And she said, yeah, you look like you'd like that. It's not just me. taffy time, y'all. I am in my head. I swear I had an hour-long conversation in like 2 seconds. And I reached across that table, grabbed her by the throat, and said, "Lady," in my head, y'all, in my head. 26 years sober, come on. And I'm in my head going, "Lady, you don't know me. I will beat you down. I will put a hurting on you. Stop being a mean girl. Stop misrepresenting our community. Be nice." You know, this is all happening in my head in like 2 seconds. And out of my mouth came, "Well, bless your heart. Have a good day." I've been around enough of you. I know what that means. I don't know if she did, but I did, you know? And I didn't have to get down there with her. I don't have to become who she thinks I am. You guys told me who I am. You guys helped. There was a life that was done to me. There was a life that I did to myself. And there's a life that I get to create today. And I'm not going to be who you all, well, not you all, but out there, who some people seem to think, you know, I am at times. You know, it's just ridiculous that the things that normal people, I agree with, I don't know who said it now. Everybody needs to be in AA or an Al-Anon. Who was that? Was that Amy? I forget who it was. Cliff? I don't know. All right. So I'm letting go of their judgment. And I'm not even looking for your affirmation anymore, although I do have those spiritual advisors. I'm looking up because God knows who I am today. And as long as I can look in God's eyes, I'm good. Because God knows everything there is in me. He knows all the bad thoughts I still have. He knows all the actions that I've taken. But He knows who I am today and what I'm going to do tomorrow. So this was a big one for me. Last year, because I'm new to Florida, I got a jury duty notice. Now, I laughed when I saw it. I thought, this isn't happening, but I'll go up there, you know, and enjoy myself for half a day and go home. And because that's what happened in Maryland. I go up, I show up, I tell them a little bit, and they go, "Yeah, we don't want you. Go home." I get there, and I try that on the judge downstairs, and he goes, "Yeah, that's fine, have a seat. If the judge doesn't want you upstairs," and I'm like, all right then, oh, okay. So 30 of us get called up to the jury room. 15 of us get called into the jury box. Cliff, I've never been through voir dire before, but it's basically a fifth step in front of 40 people that you don't know. And the judge starts asking questions, and I'm sitting in like the middle of the herd. So he gets to me and he says, "Miss Quillen, have you ever been, or your family, been convicted of a crime?" And I'm thinking in my head, let's just start at the end, and if he wants to know more, we'll tell him, you know. So I said the last time I was convicted of a crime was in 1999. It was in Baltimore, Maryland, and it was for drugs and assault. He looked at me and he said, "We'll probably get back to that." Okay. Have you ever been the victim of a crime? The victim of a crime? And I said, "Yes, sir." It was in the mid-'90s. It was outside of Baltimore City, Maryland. I was mugged and I had my throat cut. Now, I forgot that these kind of things aren't normal, right? I forgot that I still have the ability to suck the air out of the room. And the poor guy, somebody else talked about it, the poor guy next to me is like inching away, like, what am I? And I can see it, and I'm not judging you, sir, because I'd probably do the same thing, you know, if I was normal and, you know, was sitting next to something I didn't know realized I was sitting next to. So the judge is done. Okay. The state's attorney gets up and he says, talking, "Miss Quillen, I heard you say the last time you were locked up." Were there times before that? And I'm thinking, I think that should be obvious, but... And I looked at him, and I looked at the judge. Your Honor, if I had lived in Florida back then, you and I would have been on a first-name basis. And he chuckled, and it made my day, y'all. I was like, yes! You can make a cop laugh, you can make a judge laugh, it's just golden. But I followed it up with this. The judicial system saved my life. You guys stopped me when I couldn't stop myself. You gave me the treatment I needed when I asked for it, and I am forever grateful. And he looked at me and he said, thank you for saying that. And that was it. Then the defense attorney gets up, and she said, Ms. Quillen, it sounds like you've had a lot of experience with the police. Again, obvious, obvious. And I said, yes. She said, do you think that you can listen to police testimony and judge things impartially? And I said, well, all my police experiences were in Maryland. And I said, I have made amends to those officers, and they know how important they were in me being able to live a happy, healthy, whole life. I don't have any problems with the police. They did what they needed to do. She said, okay, thank you. So we go out, we come back. They're like, all right, we're going to select the jury, and they start calling names, and I'm just sitting there because I know I'm getting picked out of this in a minute. And they don't call my name. And I thought, what? Who? I get to be on a jury? You're kidding me. I'm used to it from the other side of the table. But so we listened to a couple days of DNA evidence and gun evidence and video evidence, and we're looking at, testimony and all this stuff. And by the end of it, all right, go pick your foreman, bring us a verdict. And we go in the back room, and this lady says, I think it should be one of you two guys. You guys need to be the foreman. They both looked at her, looked at me, and said, it's going to be her. Guys, you don't know. That's a full circle moment for me. I have gone from being the one on the other side, hoping that someone is judging me impartially, to being the person who's meting out justice. And that's a full circle moment for me. I never, ever thought I would be on a jury. I can't wait to do it again. I really can't. And if you haven't gotten your jury notice, maybe you'll think about it differently next time you get it. So, I used to believe that my story was all about loss, right? I mean, if I ever told you all of it, you would think that's what it is. I don't know how to stay. I don't know how to be. I don't know how to love. I don't know how to trust. And what I know today is that God writes longer stories than we do. And I can't make it up. So I'm going to tell you about those kids that I threw away. I'm 11 years sober, and I walk out to the mailbox because I've got a mailbox. And there's a letter in it without a postmark on it. And I open it up, and it says, "Hi, my name's Samantha, and I was born at this hospital on this day, and I think you're my mom. And if you'd like to get to know me, I'd like to get to know you." And it began our journey together. And 3 years later, I got another phone call from social services. And it was the honesty, y'all. I'm being honest here. I walked into an emergency room at the height of my alcoholism. I said, I'm in labor. And I walked out 3 days later without that kid. And I couldn't even tell you what year that was when I got sober. It took 3 years for me to figure out when. So I get this call. This child wants to get introduced to me, and we start writing letters. And I thought, yep, she's my kid too. And next I'm thinking, how are these kids, we were talking about this the other day, how are these kids finding me? Because this was a closed adoptions, it's supposed to be closed, done. And it's really just me and my fear. And I don't know how to deal with this. And what do they want from me? And all this, I don't know. I've never done this sober before. And I realized the only thing, they don't want anything from me except to get to know me. So here I am, I'm standing at my oldest daughter's baby shower. And I'm at her wedding. And Alcoholics Anonymous showed up because I am taking the time each time to talk to her mother. To say, I am not her mother. You are her mother. I am so grateful that you did something I was not capable of. I'm so glad that you made her the person she is today. And I can never replace that. And I just want to be a part of their life on their terms. I don't get to show up and demand anything, tell them anything, they're doing it right, they're doing it wrong, nothing. I get to show up and maybe be a trusted friend. Hopefully, for as long as they want me to be, and I don't even get to determine that. I'm blessed that they're in my life. And last Sunday, I had lunch with my two oldest daughters and their daughters. And it's a relationship that we're working on, and that they get to know each other, and they get to know me, and I get to sit back and just be a part of it and not try to control it. Thank you, Lori. So let's talk about where we carry this message, right? Because I feel like, I'm trying to carry this message adequately to the best of my ability today. And tomorrow my best might be a little bit better, but I really feel like, again, it's happening out there in the hallway. It's happening in the little clusters of people talking about their challenges and what they're going through, and have you done this, and how did you get through that? That's where it's happening. For me, it started in those very private moments with my sponsor, talking one-on-one, where she said, it doesn't have to be this way anymore. And, tomorrow, it may not be better, but it'll be different. It's one-on-one with me and my sponsees, where I am very honest with them. I'm not the blunt hammer I used to be, but I can pull it out once in a while, too, if they need a good whack. I'm not going to chase them around the car, Amy, but... And I tell them this is going to hurt. I'm not going to lie about that. You guys didn't lie to me. And it was like ripping my skin off. And it needed to be ripped off. And I tell them it's the best thing they're ever going to do. And that if they do it, and they continue to do it, and they maintain it, their sobriety date never has to change. That's what Marilyn told me. We do it at meetings. And I try to give people the grace and the space to be where they are. I'm not there to tell them what you should do, what you could do, what you ought to do, because those are all value judgment statements, saying that I know better than you do. I've been through it before. You need to do it my way. And it is not Ginny's way anymore. I've seen that, and I've seen other people's recovery underneath of what they think it should be. But I know what it is today. It's Alcoholics Anonymous. It's in the first 164 pages of that big book. It's a text for life that needs to be studied over and over and over again, because the gnomes, who said that, keep putting stuff in there. I think it was Cliff. Yeah? Yeah. It's making coffee. I had to fight for that job. I had to fight for that Curtis Bay Noon. Oh my gosh. I had to fight for that job, and if I didn't get there 2 hours early, when I got there, it was made. I was starting to get there at 9 a.m. for a noon meeting so I can make coffee. You bet. And they started showing up at 10:30, so they taught me well. It's in those putting the chairs away. It's in cleaning up without being asked and without being recognized. Those are the kind of things that you taught me. It's in, oh my gosh, it's in the business meetings. where you sit there and we argue about $20 for 25 minutes and we all are yelling at each other and then we hug and go to lunch. What? For real? Big part for me, Amy talked about it, H&I, it's in institutions. And I love me an institution. I went into the Maryland Correctional Institute for Women for years. I had to petition to go in there for quite a few years before they finally said yes, and when they said yes, I cried. Because I got street cred there. I used to live in Bee Cottage. Don't they make it sound like it's a nice Bee Cottage? With a lifer. You know, I'm in there, I'm in my room with a lifer, and I'm thinking I better be good because she's got nothing to lose, you know. And as soon as I moved to Florida, I thought I got to find me an institution. So Lowell State Prison, Thursday nights. And I started going in there, and at first it was just like 10, 12 women showing up. Last time I was there was 36 women in the room. And they show up every week. And we're reading the Plain Language Big Book. Thank you. Because that is... Because when I read it, I was like, man, this is so much easier to understand. And they're like, yeah, I like this too. You know, it's just another tool that we get to use. And thank you for giving me another tool to use for service work. You know, it's in daily life, right? I get to practice these principles, and that's what they are. Ralph talked about it. Cliff talked about it. These principles behind the steps, and I get better and better at it. And I remember Marilyn would say the same thing, and she says, you got to keep the focus on you. It's not about them. And she would say, Ginny, keep the focus on you. Keep the focus on you. Hey, keep the focus on you. And I'd be like, why you gotta say it 3 times, Marilyn? Because repetition's good for you. All right. If we all carried the same message the same way, there would be a terrible lack in Alcoholics Anonymous. We would be lopsided. That stool would not sit right. You know, and I appreciate the fact that different people do different things. We're not all here to do the same thing. Thank God. We don't have the same message. We don't have the same experience, and I do appreciate that. What I do get to do is show up imperfect and grateful and sober and trust God that He restores me in ways I never could have planned because I let go and let God. And it turns out that when I stop trying to control everything, I get invited back into my own life. And this is the message that I want to carry today. This is what I want the newcomer to know, that it never has to be that way. Thank you.